Hi guys, in this video we're going to make Poppy from the Trolls. So for this cake, it's going to be quite a large 3D cake, I'm going to need some internal support, and I've got this cake frame. It's a minion cake frame, but obviously we're going to adapt and change the minion to Poppy. So I'm going to fix my cake frame together. It just screws with these little plastic bits, and I'm going to do it slightly different from the instructions in that I'm going to connect two together rather than having two above and two below, but I'll show you that in a minute. So we're going to start by making some Rice Krispie treats. So we're going to melt some marshmallows, and I'm going to stick a bit of melted marshmallow underneath this bit of board here. This is a smaller white plastic plate. It'll just help my Rice Krispie treats stick to it. Then the rest of the melted marshmallows we're going to add Rice Krispies to. Now they're a bit crumbled up as the ones from the bottom of the bag, but that's fine. So it's nice and tacky still. Just make sure it's not too hot when you're touching it. And we're going to push this nice and tight around the bottom of this. We're just rounding off the bottom of this whiteboard. Just fill in any gaps. Push it on nice and tight. Can you see we've kind of got a semicircle under there? So now the bigger baseboard we're going to build onto. So the bigger baseboard's got two plastic pieces coming up. And what I'm going to do is slot on my cakes. So I've got 6-inch cakes there. So I've put two holes in already where the supports go. So I'll show you how I did it. I just pressed my cake in lightly, so I knew whereabouts they're going to go. And then I've got a plastic dowel that's about the same size that I could push through. Now my cakes are partially frozen, and I have soaked them in a little bit of sugar syrup. So I'm going to pile this cake up a little bit higher. So I've just stacked up two. We're inserting the frame together. And my third cake, can you see we've cut the holes out? We cut it in half, and we're just going to slot this in between. And we'll do the same now with another one. This one's just a 5-inch one, so it's a little bit smaller. And I'm going to push that underneath there. So we'll try and get in a little bit of buttercream on top of that last layer. Give it a good squeeze in place. I want it to be nice and tight. So it's just pushed in there like that. And the same at the back. Now we want to carve a bit of shape into this. So I want it to slope a little bit from the top of the cake downwards. So it gets wider at the bottom, narrower at the top. And then we're going to go a little bit deeper just at the front. Now I'm going to sit her so she's got her knees up towards her chest. So I'm cutting this top bit deeper, but I'm going to leave that bit just in front of it poking out a bit. So I'm just going to give it a once over now with buttercream. Just going all the way around. And then once I've gone around with buttercream, I'm going over again in chocolate ganache. So I've got dark chocolate ganache here because it's just going to set a little bit firmer. And can you see I've also taken it up onto my Rice Krispie treats as well, so that they stay nice and firmly in place. Now I'm making a bit of a mess of the board, but we'll clean that up shortly. Just make sure you're layering it on as smooth as you can get it. And I've just got two plastic cake dowels that we're just going to push in to those top holes on my cake frame, so that when we insert the cakes for the head, they've just got something holding them in place. Buttercream goes on first, and then we'll slot our cakes on. Okay, so you want to make sure that whatever size frame you're using, you've got the same size cake now that you're building up on. And this will be part of Poppy's head. So I've got 4 all the same width. And now as we're going a little bit higher up, which will be like the top of the hair, I'm going to put on some slightly smaller cakes. And then what we'll do is we'll trim down these so they're less stepped looking at the top. So taking it so it's a bit of a cone shape at the top. And then we're just trying to work out whereabouts the headband's going to go for where we want to indent the hair a little bit. Let's just take this little bumpy bit off here. And we can fill in some of the gaps with buttercream and ganache shortly. So we're going to cut in now slightly, just taking a little bit off, part way up the head. So this is where the head is going to go in at the headband. So it's going to be a little bit narrower there. And to bulk mine out a little bit rounder, what I've done is I've taken all my offcuts and I've mixed them with chocolate buttercream, same as you would when you're making cake pops. And then the mix I'm just going to press on just around all the edge of the cake, so just above that white plastic board where the face would naturally come out a little bit rounder. Because this cake mix is soft, with it being like a cake pop mix, what I'm going to do is just push my fingers in where I want the eyes to go. Just so I've got them roughly marked for when we cover it all shortly. I'm going to cover the whole head now in chocolate ganache. Once that's covered and set, I'm going to roll out some pink fondant and put that over the face. So you might just want to add a little bit of water to it to make it stick. And what we're going to do is we're going to start drawing in her mouth and her smile. I'm just using a Dresden tool. So I'm just pushing in, just soften the line a bit with your finger. And then for the eyes, I've just pushed the end of my little rolling pin in to make those eye sockets a little bit deeper. And I've got a darker shade of pink. I've added a bit of fuchsia to my fondant for the nose. Then I'm going to shape the nose so it's a little bit wider in the middle than it is on each edge. Stick that on with a little bit of water. And then we're going to add a little bit of shading around the eye area. So you want a little bit of pink dusted on just with a dry brush. And I'm also going to add some just below the mouth line, anywhere that we want to look a bit darker in colour. And then you're going to give her some blusher, just using your edible food colours. Just make sure you've got a dry, clean brush. So don't use your actual blusher brush. This one that I've got is just for cake decorating. Next we're going to fill those eyes with 2 white balls of fondant. Give them a bit of a squish down because we don't want them to stick out too much. And I'm just adding a little bit of water just around the very edge, ready for adding the eyelashes. The eyelashes are just in black fondant. So a little strip rolled with a point at either end. And then we'll add more eyelashes to that. So again, just cut little triangles that we're putting along that main black strip that we've added. Just using a bit of water or edible glue to stick them. Then a little bit of water in the whites of the eyes. I will add our other eyelashes shortly. So I've just cut a circle of pink. So it's the same colour that I've used for the nose. Cut 2 circles. We're just going to stick those on the white bits of our eyes. Then we want a slightly smaller circle in black, just in the middle of the pink. And just to give a bit more detail, we're going to paint around the very edge of that pink circle in a deeper pink. So I've got a dusky pink that I'm using here to paint on with. Just carefully go around. Now it's difficult not to press on to the cake, so just be careful you don't lean on the cake when you're doing this. Then just gently drag that outside line in so that you're getting little lines coming towards the black bit in the middle. And then we're going to finish off her eye with a white dot, just in fondant. Do the same with the other one. Next I've got some white food colouring and I'm just going to dot that on for freckles. I've just got a tiny little balling tool that I'm using here. Stick her on some eyebrows. Again, the same colour we've used for the nose. Just a little curved snake shape, a little point at either end. And now to give us some clothes, I've dyed pale blue. We're just going to wrap that around the body. Now it hasn't come all the way to the very front, but that's fine because we're going to do the legs as separate pieces. Just trim off around the bottom and try and push it up so it meets the neck. So I've cut like a big teardrop shape. Just put that under the head. Now for the legs themselves, I'm using solid fondant. So you'll probably find that you don't want to just eat the legs. You can obviously make these out of Rice Krispie treats if you prefer. So start with a large teardrop shape. Then we're going to try and form the foot at the end, but keeping it slightly bigger than the rest of the leg. And then we're going to put the toes in, just using a modelling tool, just indenting in as we go along that bottom edge. And then we're going to push that on in place. So I've already made one. So I've kept them a little bit wider at the bottom than they are at the top. Just push them nice and tight together. And I've cut another strip of blue that's going to look like the front of her dress. Just wrap that just around the knees and lift it up slightly at the front. And then onto her arms and hands, which again I've made in solid fondant. If your fondant's a little bit soft, you can add a little bit of Tylose to it to firm it up for these bits. So teardrop shape to start with, and then we're going to cut out some little lines for fingers. So a little triangle taken out where the thumb is, and then just little slits for the other fingers. I'm going to round those off at the ends. And when we stick it on, we want a hand to be coming round grabbing a knee, which also covers a lot of the joins and the fondant that we've added. And bring it up so it meets her shoulder. Now I've just stuck mine again with water, but if you want you can use royal icing or edible glue. And if it doesn't hold in place straight away, you can just pop a cocktail stick underneath into the cake to hold it in place, then remove it later when it's dried. So arms on, and now onto the hair. So we've got the fuchsia pink. Now it's quite thick strips of fondant that I am adding for the hair. Again, if you don't want to eat all this on the cake, do remove it. It is edible. So we're just going to create lots of points and put some lines through for hair. We'll start at the very top, sticking them on at the top. Now I am using piping gel now to stick the hair on rather than water. Very tacky is the piping gel. I'm going to go with a bigger piece now to cover the main bit at the back. Just trim this down to size. I'll bring it about halfway around the head. So the top of it we're just going to put some lines into as well, so that the bit you see at the front looks more hair-like. We'll put some lines in at the back. And you can see a little bit where I haven't smoothed off my chocolate ganache enough. So it has got a few lumps through. So hopefully it won't be as obvious by the time we've finished her. A little bit more piping gel on the back of the head again. So this bottom piece, bring around to meet the side of the face. We'll trim that off around the side. Also trim it off underneath the head and around where it meets the top piece of pink. And the join halfway up the head will be covered by her headband. And add more hairlines into the bottom bit. So now we're going to add more pieces to the front, and instead of putting them on in one big piece, we'll try and divide them into a few pieces. We're going to put little slits in the top so it's a bit more hair-like, and keep running those little lines through them. So another big triangle shape. Put the lines in this one already. You can see we've got a bit of piping gel just on the outside where it's shiny. Give it a good push on in place. Just move the ends of the hair around till you're happy with them. Now for the ears, I've put one on already. I'm just going to use my leftover pink fondant, but I will add some Tylose because it wants to be a little bit firmer this time for the ears, as they have to hold up and they're quite big and heavy. So let's start by stretching out the ear shape and just check the size against the other one. So I'm pulling them roughly to shape, and then I'm going to mark in a bit of a curvy line just on the inside up near the top. Now I'm adding spaghetti into them so that it's edible, and we're going to push that into the side of the head. Put a bit of piping gel just on the end where it's going to come into contact with the head. And I haven't spent ages neatening it up. You can spend a bit longer on it than I have if you like. But when I add the hair in front and behind the ears, it should neaten that off a little bit for us. Just a little bit of shading in the ear, again with those pink edible dust that we were using earlier. And we're going to add more hair. Again in the dark pink. We're going to cut out pieces of hair. So again, start with a triangle, cut a few little pieces out the end of the triangle so it splits into hair. If it's a little bit big when you put it on, just take some off. We'll just flick around the ends of it slightly. Keep adding. So I'm going to overlap another piece. Don't worry about the gap around the top. We're going to add a headband. So just do the same at the other side of her face as well. So she's got hair in front of her ears at both sides. We're going to add a long green strip of fondant all the way around the head. I've just joined mine at the back, but you can join it at the front as long as you know there's going to be a flower that covers the join. Just press it down a little bit. I've made some little leaf shapes, just in green, the same as the headband, and we're going to stick these on 3 at a time. They're a little bit teardrop, where they're slightly narrower at the bottom end. And then I've got a bigger teardrop. This time I've got an actual cutter. And I'm just going to push these on. This time it's in blue as well. So these are going to kind of fit in between the green bits we've put on. Just give them a really firm push on. Maybe be a little bit neater than I have been. So that's one done. And you want to do another 2. So I put one on the other side. So again, 3 green leaves, 3 blue petals, and one just above her other ear. And now what we want to do is roll out a paler blue, nice and thin, so that we can make the little trim on the edge of a dress. And I'm using a circle cutter to cut out along the top edge. So I'm getting some little curves removed. I'm going to trim a straight line just underneath that. Then we're going to stick this along the bottom of her dress. So just adding a little bit of water. And careful not to tear this bit when you are adding it. So try and tuck it in just behind the first leg. Push this all the way around till you get to the other side. And I just want a tiny piece of the same on the front of her dress. We'll just lift up her fingers a little bit to tuck that in. Just make sure if you're lifting up her fingers that the fondant hasn't dried too much, because you don't want to crack her fingers. Got a little sausage shape just on the front there where her dress fastens, like that. And then we're almost done. We're going to cut out small little teardrops, again in the same pale blue. And we're going to pop these along, meeting up with the points of the bottom of the dress. So I've got one big one that's kind of upside down, and then 2 smaller ones, one each side. Do that all the way around. Now I did have to rush a little bit with this one. So you can see a few little joins here and there, but spend a little bit longer on it. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching.